There exists a type of creature in this world, discovered by only a few, yet never proven to exist. We refer to these beings collectively as unidentified mysterious animals, or UMA for short. Hello everyone, and welcome to the World in 10 Minutes series. Across the vast South American continent, the snowy peaks of the Andes and the endless Patagonian plains together create a unique and mesmerizing natural wonder. This land is also home to countless mysterious and wild folk tales. Today, I'll introduce you to a large, semi-aquatic cryptid originating from South America, the legendary Patagonian water tiger, the Yimish. What is the Yimish? The Yimish is commonly described as a nocturnal, large mammalian creature bigger than a cougar, with a sturdy body but relatively short legs. Its entire form is covered with coarse, greenish fur. Its head is short, yet it bears enormous fangs. Its feet are flat. The front paws have 3 toes, and the hind paws have 4. Sharp claws grow at the tips, granting it tremendous strength. It is said to be capable of seizing horses from the lakeshore and dragging them into the water to eat. Earliest records. The earliest written description of the Yimish can be traced to 1898, when Argentine zoologist Florentino Ameghino published an article titled "The Living Fauna of Patagonia" in a natural science journal. In it, he mentioned hearing multiple accounts of a mysterious terrestrial animal living in the Santa Cruz region. According to indigenous descriptions, the creature lived in underground burrows, appeared mostly at night, had sharp claws, a terrifying appearance, and a body that could supposedly withstand fire and bullets, rendering it impossible to kill. Argentine explorer Ramon Lista claimed that he had personally seen this creature while traveling inland through Santa Cruz. He even attempted to hunt it, firing several shots that failed to stop the beast. It eventually fled into the brush and disappeared despite extensive searching afterwards. Lista described it as resembling a pangolin, roughly the size of an Indian pangolin, but with reddish-gray fur instead of scales. He believed it to be a living relative of the prehistoric toxodon-like animals. Ameghino's findings. Ameghino also noted that someone had sent him unknown bones from southern Patagonia, asking him to identify them. He observed that the bones resembled fossilized remains of toxodons, though smaller in size. The bones came from a damaged animal hide found on the ground, its color already faded from months of exposure. Ameghino believed this hide belonged to the same creature Lista encountered, and he named it a new species of surviving toxodon, Neotoxodon. In 1899, in another publication titled The Mysterious Living Animals of Patagonia, Ameghino used the term Yimish for the first time. Local testimony. According to him, travelers who interacted with the Tehuelche people often heard tales of a monstrous 4-legged animal impervious to blades and bullets. Locals called it Yimish, meaning the tiger of the water. Just hearing the name filled them with fear. Whenever asked for details, they would lower their heads, fall silent, or avoid answering altogether. Ameghino's brother Carlos had conducted research in Patagonia for 12 years. He eventually obtained what he believed to be reliable information about the creature. A Tehuelche man had shown him a hide containing the very bones Carlos later mailed to Ameghino, bones with structures similar to toxodon fossils. Another indigenous man, Honpin, claimed he had encountered a Yimish while traveling from Sengal to Santa Cruz and killed it by luring it with bait. They described the Yimish as amphibious, as agile on land as it was in water. now mainly dwelling in caves along the shores of lakes such as Huapi, Fontana, and Buenos Aires. Older generations believed that the creature once ranged north as far as the Rio Negro and east through the Andes all the way to the Strait of Magellan. Around 50 years ago, a Yimish supposedly traveled down the Santa Cruz River from the Andes and landed on the north shore of Pavon Island, frightening the local indigenous people into fleeing inland. That barren region has since been called Yimish Aiken, meaning the place where the Yimish rested. After examining the remains, Ameghino concluded the bones belonged to a close relative of the extinct Toxodons and formally named it a new species. Further reports. Ameghino's theory sparked significant controversy, a controversy that continues today. But his claims also prompted more reports. In 1900, French paleontologist André Tourneway published an article titled On the New Toxodon of the Tehuelche Legends and the Chome. In it, he described another creature called the Chome, which the Tehuelche widely believed to be a large, lion-sized amphibious animal covered in dark brown fur with pale yellow hair around its eyes extending towards its ears, and notably lacking external ear flaps. One evening, while observing a riverbank inland from Patagonia, Tourneway saw the head of a creature rise from the water, perfectly matching the Tehuelche description. Despite the dim light, he could make out its round cougar-sized head, its pronounced skull, pale eye markings, and slightly curled upper lip, likely due to large fangs. He fired a shot that hit the creature, but searches in the following days revealed no body or tracks. When indigenous guides heard his account, they reacted with fear and insisted he had seen the mysterious Chome, and they even showed him large cat-like tracks on a nearby sandbank, claiming they were left by the creature which dragged pumas and other animals from the water's edge, drowned them, and took them back to its lair to eat.
In 2007, Argentine journalist and writer Juan Matamala produced a testimony, mainly recording people's impressions of the American gold prospector Martin Sheffield, the man who wanted to use explosives to search for the Nahuelito. In this testimony, part of it came from Martin's daughter, Juana Sheffield. She first recounted that Martin was a practical and good father, and said that everyone knew the story of how in 1922, her father saw the footprints of a huge creature by the lakeshore, with shrubs pressed down. But the one who truly discovered those traces was actually her. One morning, shortly after the sighting, she and her brother went to the pond to look for their horses, and once again saw those traces leading toward the water. It must have walked straight across the pond. On the opposite bank, Juana saw something half red and half yellow, like the color of a shoe. It was an animal. One half of its hide was furry, the other half feather-like. They only saw the creature's chest. They did not see its head or tail. It was lying there, as if sleeping in the sunlight. The two did not stay, but immediately ran away, even forgetting about the horses. A few days later, in a backwater of the Epuñan River, they also heard sounds resembling the bellowing of a calf. When they looked toward the canyon below, they realized it was that same animal, and some fish thrashing on the water's surface, and the sounds were coming from there. Argentine naturalist Dr. Clemente Onelli believed that this was likely the rumored new toxodont, the Yimish. This part of the account should refer to the Nahuelito and should have appeared in that episode of the video. But because I had not found this article at the time, I must apologize and make up for this speculation here. In 2009, Argentine cryptozoologist Austin Whittall recorded 2 sighting reports on his blog. both occurring at Lake Caloohue-Huapi. The first said that in the 1990s, a fisherman from Sarmiento, Eloy Hutnik, reported seeing a strange creature there. The second said that on the morning of December 14, 2001, a farmer named Elias Grease saw something huge moving in the middle of the lake, about 600 meters from the shore. It had a horse-like head and a thick elephant-like body. He then observed it with binoculars. Because the creature was swimming away from him toward the center of the lake, he only felt that the animal's back was large, thick, and rounded. About 7 years earlier, his son had also seen a similar scene. Lake Caloohue-Huapi, located in the south of Chubut province in Argentina, is now dried up, but at that time still had a surface area of 98 square kilometers. Professor Whittall believed that the lake monster was likely discovered because it had lost its habitat. Since Caloohue-Huapi was listed in Amejino's article as a Yimish habitat, he considered this the same type of sighting. In 2009, Whittall received a message from an online reader saying that one morning, while the husband and wife were driving back to Natales, they encountered a strange animal crossing the road. They had no choice but to brake suddenly to avoid it. The animal looked as if it were pregnant, moving forward slowly with heavy steps, and its appearance was exactly the same as the illustration of the Yimish that Whittall had previously posted on his blog.
Argentine paleontologist Santiago Roth, in the 1899 issue of the Revista del Museo de la Plata, in his description concerning the doubtful remains found in the Ultima Esperanza cave, openly expressed his skepticism toward the Yimunsh, or rather the so-called new Toxodont. This doubt mainly focused on discrepancies between Ameghino's two articles published in 1898 and 1899. In earlier articles, he wrote that someone had sent him several small bones and asked him what animal they belonged to. But by 1899, this became, "Recently, my brother sent me some animal bones," lifting a corner of the veil surrounding this mysterious creature. Later, it even turned into, "last year." Roth believed that all related records appeared confusing and unclear. Perhaps Ameghino simply did not want to reveal the true origin of these bones, which caused the entire matter to become so chaotic. And furthermore, it was impossible to determine whether the classification of the so-called new Toxodont was based on the bones mentioned by his brother in the letter, those supposedly obtained from indigenous people, or from bone specimens brought back from Patagonia by others. He called on Ameghino to provide a prompt response. This issue later on never received an answer. I personally have not found any mention in Ameghino's other works regarding the origin of these specimens. Interestingly, Roth also mentioned in his article a similar sighting experience. His original words were as follows: "Chief Conkel of the Tehuelche tribe served as my guide for several months 2 years ago. During that time, he repeatedly told me that his grandfather said there lived a fierce beast on the shores of Lake Buenos Aires. It was extremely dangerous, and merely approaching it would cause other animals to panic. Once, while they were hunting rheas near the lake, they found a group of horses dead at the same time. Since the indigenous people are always superstitious, such folktales are innumerable. At first I did not pay attention, but when I asked him to accompany me to the lake, I noticed his fear. Along the way, he used every excuse he could, claiming the road was difficult, that the horses might be startled, and so on. Only when I finally offered him a mule did he admit that the lake water was so muddy that nothing could be seen and that we should not go. Before the final outing, he told me the meat supplies were depleted and that they needed to hunt rheas or pumas, and that I should lead the others first. I had to insist that he come along, but when we were still 3 miles away, he refused to move forward, telling me to go alone and that he would wait on a nearby hill from where the lake could be seen. I wanted him to come down to the lake so he could see for himself that there was no danger, After much persuasion, I barely managed to get him within 1 kilometer of the lake, yet he still refused to approach the shore. I believe these indigenous people likely only know of the Yimish from traditional stories. They mix together characteristics of different animals and leave outsiders completely confused. This mammal, said to move on land as freely as in the water, might very well be a large rodent. Similar theories appear in the 1902 work Across Patagonia by British explorer Hesketh Pritchard. He wrote, "The legends of the Indians are clearly exaggerated imaginations, yet I still hope to find a factual origin beneath these fantasies. However, after thorough investigation, I must admit I found nothing. The indigenous people have never even entered the Cordillera Range and avoid the mountains altogether. The reports about the Yimish appear quite clear in print, but in actual field investigation, I found them extremely vague. In the end, I concluded that the legends likely refer to a type of large otter. I myself saw a very large otter in the Sengare River, but unfortunately I had no rifle with me. Though I returned with a weapon as soon as possible, it had long disappeared. Considering that the Indians attribute amphibious traits to the Yimish, there seems no reason to doubt that the stories may indeed be based on a real animal, perhaps a subspecies of the giant Brazilian otter." American zoologist Roy Mackal wrote in his 1908 book, Searching for Hidden Animals, that London journalist Peter Fleming, in his Brazilian Adventure, mentioned that in the great rivers of central Brazil there lived a giant otter said to reach 10 to 12 feet in length. He believed that if such individuals truly existed, they would certainly match the water tiger described by the Tehuelche people. Professor Mackal speculated that the Yimish might be a rare large subspecies of the giant otter, its distribution restricted and perhaps still shrinking. Cryptozoologist Bernard Heuvelmans believed that Ameghino seemed to have gone completely off track. He accepted his brother's argument that the hide came from a Yimish, but this had nothing in common with toxodonts. Such a massive creature might inspire fear because of its size and strength, but believing that this undisputed herbivorous creature would prey on horses and drown them was simply too far-fetched. Moreover, the Yimish was said to be amphibious, while its alleged limb structure differed entirely from the traditional image of a toxodont. After all, animal habits cannot necessarily be deduced from skeletal structure. Large mammals, such as tapirs and hippos, live amphibious lives without any skeletal evidence suggesting such behavior. Dr. Austin Whittall also mentioned several explanations for the Yimish on his blog, such as the American mink, the sea otter, and others. It seems that after the early 20th century, theories increasingly leaned toward the idea that the Yimish might be a type of large rodent. Based on all the written materials I have found, I personally believe that compared to the Yimish's supposed reality, its legendary attributes seem much stronger. But I do not deny the possible existence of such a so-called semi-aquatic cat-like creature.
First of all, the skeptical attitude many scholars hold toward the Yimish is based on Professor Florentino Ameghino's 2 papers. His own ambiguity is actually what draws even more attention. Perhaps because his new toxodont theory had been criticized, in 1901 he wrote a letter to the German zoologist Hermann Ehlers explaining, "I did not describe the new toxodont based on literature, but based on those bones I mentioned. These bones absolutely possess distinctive features and are beyond doubt. After that, I merely referred to the many descriptions given by indigenous people and white men about a large mammal living in the lakes of Patagonia. If they are unreliable, the responsibility is not mine. I only report the data currently available. There may be more than one mysterious mammal living in Patagonia, perhaps several, because I keep receiving similar information." This statement is now interpreted as Professor Ameghino's disclaimer. Under controversy, he seemed forced to re-examine the situation at that time. In fact, after reading many articles criticizing the new toxodont, I found that most scholars cared most about the fact that Professor Ameghino hurried to assign a scientific name to an animal whose existence had not been confirmed.
Such an action could easily cause taxonomic confusion. In addition, his reports indeed contained inconsistencies between earlier and later statements, which made later scholars unable to accept them. According to later explorers' accounts, the legend of the Yemish truly existed. I believe this creature also has a possibility of being real. There are many derivative animals related to water tigers, water lions, or water leopards, especially in Argentina and Chile of South America and in Gabon and Zambia of Africa. Their descriptions are very similar, large felid-like body shapes and great predatory power. But I do not believe the Yemish is a surviving toxodont. Although current analysis of the nutrient foramen in American toxodonts suggests they might have been capable of intense activity like elephants, stable isotope analysis indicates that these animals were entirely herbivorous. As for the giant otter theory, I think it is relatively reasonable. In fact, it does not necessarily have to be a giant otter, because no one has truly witnessed the so-called water tiger dragging large prey into the water. Just like China's water monkey legends, in some places it is described as cat-like, with visible hair, capable of dragging children into the water. But these are only legends. No one knows of any real confirmed case where someone was dragged under and drowned. So these stories were likely meant to exaggerate danger and keep people away from water sources so they wouldn't slip or fall in, or be attacked by other dangerous animals coming to drink water. And the image of an otter provides the perfect material to exaggerate such tales. Of course, this is only my personal speculation. As for the truth of the Yemish, it remains shrouded in the cold winds of Patagonia even today. In recent years, many South American lakes have been gradually drying up due to glacier water from the Andes, climate change-driven increases in evaporation, and other factors. Population growth and sewage discharge have further accelerated the aging of lakes, causing water quality to decline and ecosystems to be destroyed. Some waterfowl and certain fish species are facing extinction. I think that if the Yemish truly exists, then as its habitat disappears, it may soon be discovered and confirmed by humans. But that might also mean that it has already been driven into a dead end. And that would not be a victory for science, but a lament from an entire ecosystem. Protecting the ecological environment and respecting nature is to preserve a possible home for all known and unknown life. In the end, the same sentence remains true. The unknown will always be greater than the known. This is the charm of Yuma. That's all for this episode. Thank you for watching.